welcome to the Anti-Heroes Podcast with your host, Zach Blair. I am Zach Blair. I don't know when or how these are rolling out, but I'll update you as what I've been doing. I just got back from the longest tour of Australia I think anyone has ever done. It was 5 weeks, folks. Maybe 5.5 weeks. With the Rise Against band, we went over there with Blink 182, and they were lovely to us. They were such sweet hosts, and the shows were amazing. It was a dream. It was such, and this 30 years of doing this, we played a 45-minute set. We were done by 9 p.m. every night and back in our hotel. It was just crazy. But did some of our own shows. We did our own show in Christchurch, New Zealand, and our own show in Hawaii. We started the tour with our own shows in Melbourne and Sydney. So if you were at any of those, thank you so much for coming out. We really appreciate it. It was a bit of a tumultuous tour because our bassist Joe had to go home and deal with a family tragedy. And we had our friend Neil Hennessy, who plays drums predominantly in the bands the Lawrence Arms, Sparta, and Joyce Manor. He grew up with our singer Tim. He played bass for us on a moment's notice. Came out and saved the tour, did a fantastic job. And it was strange to do it without a member of our, band and look over and see someone else. But thankfully we were able to forge ahead and complete the tour successfully. And Joe got to come back at the end. So yeah, it's been a whirlwind, folks. And then I can't straight into South by Southwest because I live in Austin, Texas, where I am now. And I did some work with the lovely folks at Marshall Amplifiers. Thanks again to them. Wonderful Steph Carter, who is a friend of the show. I've had him here on this podcast. He works with Marshall Amps now, so he had me come out and do some things with them for South by Southwest. I got to be a part of their panel with Jimi Hendrix's sister, which is still mind-blowing to me, to sit so close to a sibling of the greatest guitar player of all time. And she was wonderful and lovely, as you would expect. And we talked about musicians' mental health and the community and community of musicians worldwide and on a local level and a state level and what we could all be doing to give back. I was also with Alex from Black Angels, which is a wonderful band here in Austin, Texas. And it was just a great thing to be a part of. It was very humbling. It was very humble to even be asked to participate. And so my guest today, I'll get into that, was somebody I met during all of this. And his name is Ryan Fluff Bruce. His nickname is Fluff. And Ryan hosts a podcast, a YouTube show page called Riffs, Beards, and Gear. And I figured I needed to talk to someone from that world on this podcast because I don't want to be the old Luddite boomer that just shakes his fist at anything new, because this is a phenomenon. The YouTube guitar pages are sort of taken over. I mean, it definitely is introducing younger folks and just a whole new generation to guitar playing in general. But it is answering questions that we've all wanted to know. I mean, I would have killed to have these pages around when I was coming up and had so many questions, was just trying to figure it out myself. You have that wonder of, am I doing this right? Which also kind of makes it interesting and cool and gets you the sort of upper hand with creating your own world. But man, it is certainly nice to have those questions answered when you really want them and you kind of want to know if you're crazy or not. So Ryan, as you will hear, he's been doing this since the early days, since the Wild Wild West days of the guitar pages on YouTube. He's one of the early guys, and he's one of the most successful, and he runs a really cool page that I would suggest to you. He is also a band guy. He has toured. He's done my end of it and sort of, dominates on his own end. He was in the bands Dragged Under. And, we talk a little bit about his other bands as well. But I will shut up and we can get into my interview with Ryan Fluff Bruce. Hey,
I'm
Ryan.
recording on my big camera.
Oh, hi, right. See, so for those uninitiated, I am talking to Ryan Fluff Bruce, but we'll just call you Fluff for this.
Please
Um,
do.
and he said he's recording because Ryan's so much better at all of this than I am. Ryan has arguably, I don't know, the most successful sort of guitar YouTube page, I think, at least, if not the most, then one of the most.
One.
You were telling me you'd gotten in the game kind of early on, and it is called Riffs, Beards, Gear. Uh, what was the impetus for you to get into that early on before it was sort of like a phenomenon?
Honestly, I was so at the time I was at Boeing. I worked on the 737 program, and I was second shift, and which meant I didn't even start work till like 4 p.m. and I would work till midnight. And my wife at the time worked a regular, it was like 8 to 6. And so basically I would wake up at 9 a.m., 8 a.m., something like that, and I would have nothing to do until it was time to go to work at 3:30 is when I left the house, I think. So,
Wow.
um, I wanted to get into recording at home, and I had these musical ideas, but I didn't know how to get them out, and I was just frustrated that I wasn't finding the content that I was wanting in order to learn. And at that time, the content that was out, you would find these videos of these guys having these incredible guitar tones with the Line 6 pod and all that kind of stuff. And everyone was so guarded. Oh, I can't tell you my secrets, but I have a secret sauce. And that really pissed me off because, God forbid someone else sounds good too. Like, I
Right.
don't know why. I don't know why that's so threatening. And so I just started doing it myself. And I was just had the attitude of like, you know what? Fuck you. I'm going to learn and I'm going to be better at this than you. And I'm going to tell everyone else how to do this. And
Right.
that kind of turned into learning how to phase microphones and then making a video on how to do that and how to dial in a guitar tone with a modeler versus a real amp. And I was just bored and kind of just having fun. Honestly, it was the Wild West at the time. But
Yeah.
ironically, in 2011, I thought I was too late because there was four other YouTube channels, and I was like, "Who's gonna watch my stuff?" There's four other channels. Like it just
Right.
there was no precedent for anything. So
Well,
yeah, I don't
and
know.
I feel like you kind of started, you were the sort of the early pioneer, and now it just seems like that is what those channels are. Um,
Hmm.
and I sort of wanted you. We met last week. For those that just we haven't known each other very long, but we
No,
took to each other. I felt like I'd known you for a long time, and
totally.
and and I think that's because of a shared mutual thing that I have with a lot of the guests on here is that you did tour in a band, you did tour in bands, um,
Yeah,
one being Rest Repose and one being Dragged Under, and so you did tour and you did do this end of things, and then that sort of ended, that career ended, and you sort of transitioned into this. It sounds like right when the sort of the gold rush of these sort of shows were starting and happening, and I do think they're so interesting and important. I mean, if I was a kid, I would have loved to have had a show like yours. Give me the keys to
yeah,
the kingdom, you know?
yeah. I don't. Yeah, it was such a weird kind of circle. So I was working a 9 to 5 until 2015, and I started doing the videos on my lunch breaks. Like I would have this at the time old MacBook, and I would basically shoot during the day, and then I knew on my hour lunch break that I would have nothing to do at night, and I would put my jacket over my head and I would edit my videos, and when I got home, I would upload them, and then I would go to sleep, and then go to work, or go to sleep, wake up, film something else, and that was just my process. It was pretty much a hobby until I got fired from Boeing in 2015, and then
Right.
and then in the same month I got divorced, and like literally in the span of 3 weeks I was left with an empty house and two dogs and my guitars, and that was all I had in the world
Holy shit.
suddenly. And so I cashed out my retirement. I think there was $50,000 in the retirement fund. After early withdrawal penalties and all that kind of stuff, I ended up with like $28,000, and I decided I'm going to live off of this money as long as I can. It ended up being a year and a half, is what I live
Wow.
off of it, and I still had a mortgage payment, but I got the house real cheap, and so like my mortgage was like $1,000 a month, and so it was doable. And all I did was I was so scared. You know, I'm 35 when this happens. Um, I just start making videos. I just start
Right.
immediately like that's literally I wake up, no one's telling me to be anywhere for the first time in my entire life, and I just start making videos. My really good buddy Jared Dines, um, who was exploding on YouTube, having mega viral video success, and you know in the span of like a year he had over 1 million subs. Him and I lived really close to each other. We started a band called Rest Repose, and that was a complete DIY. We had no help. No one liked us, but we did a lot of touring in that band, and that imploded, and that kind of turned into Dragged Under. The whole time, the content thing is still happening. I'm kind of finding ways to continue to do that in between tour cycles and album cycles and that kind of stuff. And that, yeah, I don't know. And so the touring thing for me has only ended. Only ended a year ago, and
Well,
the YouTube thing has been the bread and butter for since 2015. Really, I took a huge gamble, and I
wow.
didn't expect it to work, but it worked.
Well, it's super impressive. And I mean, I have to admit my ignorance, I'm sort of a Luddite when it comes to this phenomenon of YouTube guitars, guitar players and these sorts of things that I've just noticed them in the magazines and stuff like these
Yeah,
guys that are that I think I had an affinity for you because you were a guy in a band that had toured and had been in a band and had played to no one.
100%.
I've seen things like guys that never went that route, and more power to them. It is a viable way to do it nowadays. But you as well
Absolutely.
know that there are guys with signature model guitars who have never even been on a stage before, um, and that's just a new thing. I can't be that old man that's like shaking my fist at all the young whippersnappers. It's just things change all the time, and I at least kids nowadays, this is how they're digesting guitar information. I mean,
Yeah,
I know
yeah.
I learn licks and take guitar lessons on YouTube all the time. I would have killed for that medium,
Right.
you know. Well, you know what I mean? So
Yeah.
did you have this in mind at all when you started that it would be quite this successful?
No. Actually, it's funny. So in the beginning, it was just something to kill time before work, and I put the first video up, and it got 100 views, and I thought, holy shit, I don't even know 100 people. Like, I've
Right.
made it. Like, wow, it's gotten 100 views. But at this time, though, there's no real AdSense. There was no money in any of this stuff, and it had nothing to do with that stuff. So guys like Ola England and Rob Chappers, Tone King, myself, Keith Merrow, um, we were all doing it just because we fucking loved playing guitar, and
Yeah.
it was never more than that. We don't you don't sit there and be like, oh, I want to make, it was really about to see if we could get these companies to send us loaner gear so we can
Right.
make more videos. That was
Right.
the game, right? So, Line 6 saw me on Twitter and was like, hey, can we send you this Pod HD 500? And, we'll send a shipping label with it so you don't have to pay for shipping. And I thought, I don't have to pay for shipping in order to have a video for this new thing I can't afford. Amazing.
Yeah.
And companies didn't have budget set aside for content stuff. It was all still
Right.
magazines and old school, the last of the old school stuff.
Right.
And the transition happened when the big box stores started carrying less and less cool stuff. And so then if you wanted to know about the latest and greatest EVA champ that was not in Guitar Center anymore, well, then you had to go to YouTube to check out someone who actually happened to have it and then make a video about it.
Right.
So that shift happened over the course of 3 or 4 years, and here we are. Like, that's now the rule.
And I think what's so important about that is like I talked to you for 10 minutes and you obviously are a guy that knows your shit and
Thank you.
all, yeah, absolutely. And you know all of the technical end of it that supersedes. I mean, I'm nerdy. We've established, but
You're a nerd.
you, go-
Yeah.
I'm a nerd. I'm a nerd, and but you go way above my head, and it's one of those things with your channel. That's what I want. I want to tune in and have a
Yeah,
guy tell me the specifics about this thing that I don't know about. Because then now maybe it's on my radar, and I'm like, oh, I will listen for that. I will try to hear that top end that or that I'm not, that headroom that I
totally,
wasn't even thinking about in the first place.
totally.
It helps you out. It's you're commiserating with these people, and it gives it
Hmm.
this third dimensional sort of experience that I think is so important. And that's why when I met you, I was like, I want to have you on here because to me, I feel like this is companies need guys like you, and I think they've realized that. And without going too far into it, that's kind of how we met. Um,
Yeah,
they're stepping up to that plate and realize they probably realized their old paradigm, the old way they did things of giving guys like me free gear to go and tour. With a guy like you, they can give that same one piece of gear and it's going to reach so much more. It has the
right,
ability to reach so
right,
many more people,
right.
you know.
Yeah, so now it's going to cost them whatever it is, that one guitar. But out of that one guitar they send to me, they're also going to kill or check off, the marketing side of it. So now they're going to have a piece that they would have to otherwise create to go and post it on Facebook or make an ad
Right.
for Instagram. So they're killing four birds with one stone, so to speak, with guys like
Right.
me, which is the whole point for them. And I think a lot of times guys like me are accused of being, oh, you corporate sellout, or
Right.
you're just a company shill and all that stuff. And, they think it's like the 1920s movie studio system where like we are owned by these companies when in fact, it's actually the opposite. Like I don't need any of these companies to do anything content wise. I
Right.
choose to work with companies that I think are cool. And I've literally in 13 years of doing this have had maybe two companies ever suggest what to say. And each time I was like, nope, we're done here. And that's it.
Right.
Like,
We're
you know
good.
what I mean? So it's pretty cool and it's pretty weird at the same time because, Thanksgiving dinner explaining what I do to my grandmother
Yeah.
is she's like, wait, so you talk to a camera, but about what? And I'm like, well,
Yeah.
changes, grandma. And she's like, what?
Yeah. Well, and it's so
Yeah.
commendable because I don't think those companies thought that 10 years ago they would be in
Mm-mm.
this position where the
No.
guy that kind of knows more about their gear than they do, that they were going to be needing that guy. You know what I mean? Like
It's yes.
anyone that it doesn't work under their employ already, and you know what I mean. And it's like, oh shit, there's this
Yeah.
whole other way of doing these things now. It's highly commendable. One thing you did talk about though when we met is that you have worked um, on sort of the R&D and side with a lot of companies.
Yeah.
Can you talk about that for a minute? Maybe some of the companies you've worked with.
Yeah. So so initially when the channel got a little bit of notoriety, I always like to say the YouTube thing is just a visual resume, honestly. It's just a proof of concept that you can execute things like marketing ideas or content ideas and all that kind of stuff. The YouTube thing itself isn't some crazy money making thing. Like that's not what it is at all. Um, but what it is a platform for people to actually see your work and see how it's done out in the real world. Before I got fired from Boeing, I was really trying to break into the music industry, and all I ever wanted was respect and legitimacy
Sure.
in the music industry. And I didn't have a band platform at the time. So I would find these jobs, or I would get asked if I knew anyone who wanted these jobs. And so Two Notes Audio Engineering hired me as basically their marketing, social media, artist rep. They were pretty small in 2013, and I was basically wearing a lot of hats for them at that time. And I took that role and then I transformed that. So I had that, I had my Boeing job, and then I got a marketing gig with Positive Grid, who made, at the time, they made the Jam Up Pro software. So it was
Right.
basically the digital amp on your phone before they came out with the Spark stuff. And then at the same time, I got an artist rep gig with Evertune. So I was working those three jobs,
Right.
Boeing, and then making content at the same time just to move the needle forward. And this was all in 2013 time
Right.
span. I was exhausted, and I was also still married. So I
That'll
just, I had no time for anything, and I was exhausted, but I was, so when the job went away, I had those things to fall back on, and it let me honestly like pay my mortgage. And
sure.
it was a cool net that couldn't last forever though. But
Right.
what I did get to see is the other side of the music industry from a non-player's point of view of logistics of what artists want. So I worked with Devin Townsend a lot, Gojira, um, tons. I worked with you guys pretty early on, although I don't
Yeah.
think we ever spoke directly. But I was in the email chains of like Rise Against need more guitars sent to Ash in LA for,
Yeah.
Evertune stuff and all that kind of stuff, right? So
Yeah, we went. It's funny.
yeah,
We talked about that, and we went through that thing with those bridges because I thought at the time, and still they were such revolutionary ideas.
yeah,
And for a studio situation, it's those. If this is an unpaid plug, the Evertune bridge, I have a lot of guitars with those on them, and man, they do really do what they
yes,
say, which is they will stay in tune for years. Um,
yeah,
I just, I got to, as you do with what we do, you sort of there's the next new shiny thing, but I still think those bridges are great. And it's funny you and me did work together way back when. But to talk a little bit about your point, it's like we share that in the fact that all of those jobs had something to do with music, with this like true passion that you had. So
totally,
it's a labor of love, but you're also getting paid to do it. And that was all I ever wanted
yeah,
to do, was just make my living with something that was music, that was related
yeah,
to all of this. And that was something, when you and me talked about it, it's like I could see that with you as well, and that was a shared sort of um, characteristic.
yeah.
Uh,
It always blew me away that even from like when I was such a kid. So there's the job side of it, but it also really still completely blows my mind that really, if you write a really cool, if you write the correct chord progression, you could then pay your bills and buy a house. Use you know what I mean? Like meaning
yeah,
if you write the right song, things will change for you. And
it's
that
true.
blew my mind because no one can take that from you.
It's true, and it's such a abstract almost thing to think about, because but that's the way in any when you monetize any art, it is
Yeah.
such a different way of looking at things. It's like a different lens. You just broke it down in a really good way, because it's not tangible. It's not
Oh,
tactile. It's not, you know what I mean? It's this
no.
thing that's in the air that you just sort of were an antenna for, and now you're making a living. It's pretty amazing. It's like magic.
Yeah. People always get so disappointed because I get asked all the time, well, how do I get my band to the next level? How do I get this and that? And I tell them the most unsexy thing ever: write better songs.
That's
Like,
true, man.
and whether that means bringing in a producer or a different guy or an outside party, don't think that you can be Brian Wilson and go, I'm going to write this perfect song with nobody's help. Here you go, perfect song to this band. Like, that's
Right.
generally not how it ever works. Um,
Yeah.
but work with other people and come up with the best thing that you can come up with and take yourself and your ego out of it, and things will get real nuts for you real quick.
It's true. It's true.
You know,
Right back.
we had this we had a demo and we gave it to Joey Bradford from the Used, and he called me and he was like, yo, let me help you. Like, these songs are incredible. And we were like, really? We were just sharing
Yeah.
them with our friends. And he was like, you should come on tour with us. And by the time we got to New York, there were 12 labels at the show looking at us and like bidding for us. And like, it was
That's great.
bonkers because we wrote the songs.
So when did that band Dragged Under sort of start? When did that the nucleus of that sort of happen?
Pretty much immediately after. So Rest Repose's last tour was in December of 2018. We had booked some studio time in February. The band imploded. We had the studio time prepaid for anyway. So Tony, Dragged Under singer, and I, and our original guitar player Josh, went to the studio anyway. There was a snowstorm that happened in February
Wow.
2019 in Seattle, and we basically got snowed into the studio for like 3 4 days, and we had energy drinks, Thai food from the corner place, and we wrote the record in like 3 days, having no blueprint or anything. We just were just thinking of like, hey, this is cool. Oh, give me that guitar. Oh, what would be sick is if we did this.
Right,
And like
right, right.
it was the most organic thing ever. And we have these 4 finished songs at the end of the day, and we just sent them to our friends. Like we were stoked on them, and they were fucking incredible and
Wow.
changed our lives.
Wow. Yeah, it's the best way, when that happens because it breaks it down to that feeling you had when you were a kid when you got into all this like, man, I've got a cool riff.
Yeah,
Check this out. And it's so funny how no matter what level you're at, that still happens. You
totally.
go into a room with three or four other guys that might now be dads and have
Right.
mortgages and things like that, and you're like, it's still that thing from when you were 14 years old with like, I did something I think is cool and I want you to check it out. uh you know
Yeah, I don't know what that is. Like, because it's not so like lyrically, it could be argued that like it gets tougher and tougher to write about stuff you're mad about because at the end of the day,
sure.
you kind of want to just stand in line and buy your groceries.
Yeah,
But
it's word.
you know what I mean? But
Yeah,
with a guitar riff, you're just like, oh, that's dope. Or
yeah, yeah,
like
yeah.
you can't, it doesn't matter what's happening in your life. A dope riff is a dope riff.
Well, because we're all still just young kids trying to play master of puppets. You know what I mean? Like,
100%, dude.
you know what I mean? That's all we're all trying to
Yeah.
do. We're all
Yeah.
just trying to be Hetfield. And I don't care what type of music you're playing. You could be playing indie pop or even country. You're still trying to
Yeah.
be Hetfield. So that it's the Hetfield of it all is what it is really. You know. So
That's amazing.
would you would you say that with your background with working for those companies that one thing I was impressed by with you is again not with going too deep into how we met and why we met. You know how to talk to those companies, which I've been doing this for 30 years, and there's always been a sort of miscommunication with me and the people that I endorse, unless they are friends of mine. Luckily, I have people
Sure.
at certain companies that we were kind of friends prior, and now that's the sort of relationship I want to have with those companies. And since a lot
Yeah.
of what you do is working with companies, and you're showing the world their products, um, you seem to have a better understanding of who those folks are and definitely a better vernacular and sort of shorthand with them. Do you think that is because you also have your background with working with those companies?
Yeah, that's a great question. I've literally never been asked that before. Um, I don't think that doesn't ever come naturally. I don't think, well, maybe for some people it does, but that never came naturally for me. And it's only because I've been doing this so long that, I've been on the other side of it where
Sure.
I completely miscommunicated or misrepresented myself and the boundaries of which we were working together in, and that backfires and that becomes a real awkward conversation and people get upset, and that has certainly happened to me. However, you know when you're doing sponsored deals, I've worked with Amazon and eBay and all these things. You better be exacting in what you're asking, and they can say no, but you need to make it very clear on what you are asking. So I guess over time you are able to just kind of communicate, this is what I want, this is how I want it, or this is what I am willing to give you.
Right.
um but at the end of the day, like I said, like I don't know these days, and it's only recently, like I don't need anybody, and I don't need any companies,
Right.
except for the ones I want to work with and that I feel passionate about. Everyone else, I don't care. And
Sure.
that may sound crass, but I just don't want to waste time because I just feel like we are around and on this planet for such a limited time. Like I want to only do cool shit, man. And
Right. Well,
that's it.
it's also very evident, you can be a good actor and go, "Oh, this thing I just heard about yesterday is the greatest thing in the world and you should check it out." And you can do that, but I think it's
You
evident in
can.
your channel, the products you do show and you do give rundowns of and you do things, you can tell that you're enthused about them. You can tell you're excited about them, and I think that's why you're successful and why your page is successful. You know,
Thanks, man. I that's such a weird like I get. So I've always done demos. I've never done reviews, and the difference being a review is here are the things I hate about it. Here are the things I
right,
like about it. A
right,
demo, for me, all I've ever done is just gone. Listen, if I owned this, this is what I would do and how I would use it. You decide if that's to your liking or not. I'm going to say out of this is the greatest thing ever. However, of course, you will pick up a guitar, and if it's like a really, really amazing guitar, you know, in 5 seconds if that guitar is amazing, and you
right.
are going to get stoked out on it. So,
Absolutely.
and I think that's taken wrongly a lot of times. Enthusiasm is always misjudged, and I should be talking shit about this thing or this company. And it's just like I just don't do that. Like I
Right.
love gear as much as I love writing songs, and they all go hand in hand to me.
Sure.
So
Sure.
they're so related.
Well, yeah, and they are, I was impressed with that because I forever, when it comes to like sort of the commerce of what we do, I, it just goes over my fucking head. And I know how to
Yeah.
talk to those people as the sort of bumbling, uh, deficient, hyperactive, um, person that I am, where where I overshare and TMI and maybe, get too ingratiated and all that stuff. I know how to do that with them. But I don't know how to talk to them about like, what it is we're supposed to be talking about. So
Dude, isn't it
I
the
was really
worst
impressed with it.
talking about money is
Yeah.
like
Yeah.
I was raised to never ever talk about money. My mother would just be like, "Do not ever
Absolutely.
bring," you know what I mean? So like
Exactly.
that that's why I have managers, and that's why I let them take care of that kind of stuff. But
Yeah.
I just want to do creative, cool stuff. But I absolutely understand. But to your credit, you are incredibly disarming. Um, as someone who just met you last week, it was very refreshing and disarming of okay, clearly right off the bat you are you're not full of shit.
No, thank
You
you.
are just being you, and
Yeah.
that's all you can be, and that's fucking awesome.
Well, thank you, sir. Thank you. I've definitely known and seen, I know a lot of great people that do what I do, but I've also met the ones that sort of fuel the stereotype. You know what I mean?
Oh
And
yeah.
you meet those guys, and you're just like, okay, I know exactly what I'm not going to be, and who I'm not going to be, you know. I like it when you meet somebody, and you're like, I feel like I've known that person for 30 years, and, and
Totally, dude.
and again, I wanted to have somebody that does what you do on this because I don't, it. Maybe it's my age, or maybe it's the demographic. It's just it sort of escaped me, and now I, as of recently, started using YouTube as a tool for like, oh shit, I want to learn this new lick, or I want to study Ingve Malmsteen, or whatever it might be, because it is still my hobby as well. It's my
Totally.
passion. It's all I do. It's my only
Yeah.
hobby. It's all I don't. I've said it on here 1,000 times. I don't fucking hike or camp or golf. I don't golf.
Right.
So this is what I do, and so I've used what a resourceful tool, and come across your page and come across Ola's page and everybody else's, and I was like, oh shit, there's this whole world going on that I really don't know anything about that I am now using and getting so much good information from. And for those that haven't seen your page, they should really check it out because you do such cool things with riffs, and you have riff shootouts with other guys,
Yeah,
and
yeah.
you do talk a lot about a lot of gear that I think people can't afford, and they want to hear what it is, and they want to see what it does, and they want to so I think there's
Yeah.
just a whole lot you offer with your page.
Thanks, man. I appreciate that.
Absolutely.
I try to, it's weird. Much like music, it does change over the years of what, because you can't get bored, right? Like, so much
Sure.
like being in a band, writing songs and playing the same songs. Now you have write the set of thing. Now you got to go out and do it for a year or two or more. Um, for me, I try to strike some kind of a balance between the types of videos I'm making, because I've learned in the past that I will get burnt out and I will not want to do. I get so burnt out on demos and writing the little tune that I demo it with, but then I'll make a bunch of Ready to Roast My Rigs or ridiculous reverb listings, which are just so damn funny. The
Right.
people that are, the things that they try to sell, that lets me pivot a little bit, and that I can kind
Sure.
of find creativity in different areas. So then I can come back to the demos and come back to the real nerdy stuff and still feel the same way I used to about it.
Yeah. Add a little personality and might not take yourself so
Yeah.
seriously, you know.
I just, I, we've all met those guys that like
Yeah.
take everything way too fucking seriously. I'm just like, dog, you talk to a camera for a living. Like there's people out there with real
Oh,
problems in the world,
right.
and
Right.
and you're gonna bitch about having to talk to the camera and get a free guitar. Like, get
Yeah.
the fuck out of here.
Yeah, no, you're totally right. I will say that too. As soon as if I'm complaining about anything, I really have to stop myself and say, I breathe a rarefied air. What I do for a living is made of unicorns and pixies and magic dust and stuff.
Totally,
I'm very,
dude.
very, very, very lucky that I get to do what I do.
I love that.
Yeah, yeah. So do you ever see yourself touring again, join a band, doing things like that, or are you just too
Um,
busy with this?
so with Dragged Under, Tony and I on paper were like the guys who took care of all of the business side of Dragged Under. And I think for me, my experience was so dominated by paperwork, emails, arguing with promoters. We did have a wonderful team around us at Mascot, and we had Dave Shapiro booking us. Um, but it was so administrative at times that it really kind of it sucks the life out of it
Hmm.
pretty quick. I would absolutely tour in like a listen, I don't take care of any of the business side. I show up and I tour, or I would tech as well for
Sure.
the right gig. Teching was what I originally wanted to do. I never wanted to be the guy on stage.
Right.
Um, I used to always want to be a guitar tech because I love that stuff. And but yeah, I would tour
Yeah.
eventually, like for
That
the right gig, of course.
that's evident, and I told you that when we met. I was like, you would be the world's greatest guitar tech because you understand all facets of it, but you also have such a knowledge for all the sort of technical aspect of the amps and the guitars that I
Totally.
think supersedes most musicians I know. We all know every musician I know, it gets to a certain point and then it stops. When you're talking about, the Transformers and shit, like
Yeah.
where it was made, the brand that was when I was like, okay, this guy knows his shit. So, that's when it goes over in my head. And so I think, like I was saying, I think that would make you the world's greatest tech. And you also build rigs. You have built rigs for other
Yeah.
folks and things like that. So
Yeah.
there's
Yeah.
there is that as well. So I ask everybody, and since you have toured, you have done stuff like that, and you've just been a musician. It's something we all share. Have you lost anything? What's one that got away? Have you had to hawk something? Have you gotten stolen? Something you wish you still had?
Um, One of them was at the time, I'd only ever seen one other one, but it was a Revision E dual rectifier. Um, I got such a great deal on it. This was well before the world was really hyped on any of the rectifiers, and at the time, it was just a used old rectifier. It was Revision E, and I had to sell it in order. So I bought my first house. Me and my wife at the time were buying our first house, and we put the down payment, and they did some paperwork, and it turned out like we were like 2 grand short on
Oh
the down payment,
shit!
and I had to sell that amplifier to make the down payment on before losing the house, and
Oh
I did
shit!
it, and yeah, it was worth it though. It was worth it.
Yeah, worth it, but big of you, big of you. We had a big
Yeah,
long talk
that,
about rectifiers. You and me. You're a rectifier guy.
God, I love rectifiers.
They're good.
I love
They're really
I
good.
I fucking love rectifiers. Mason Marshall for me were always like, I don't know, man. Those things are like peanut butter and jelly for me,
Yeah.
and I oh God,
Well,
love them.
when I first joined Guar, I had two road ready. They right back then Mesa. I don't know if they still do it. They would make cabinets that were road ready, so they would basically build them into road cases. And I had one of their they had their
Wow.
full size 412s because they had the smaller
Uh huh.
412s that were their standard road ready. And I asked them if they could do the full size rectifier cabinets, so like
Hmm.
and they did that for me. They had only done it for one other person, I believe. They did two of those for me, and then I had a rack mount dual rectifier that I road case, and then I got rid of the rack mount dual, but then I got another one from a friend years ago, and I still have that one. But yeah, man, that was
Let me
and
know
I
the
still have
serial number on that thing.
I still have those cabinets too.
What?
Yeah,
Really?
yeah. I should have shown you while you were here. Should I even think of? Yeah, they're you know what I'm talking about, the full size big Mesa
Yeah.
412. Yeah, they're built into cabinets, but the on one of them the sort of the latches on the side had like broken and stuff, so the lid came out. But yeah, man, I still have them in storage.
I have only seen the bass cabs. I was totally unaware they ever did them for anyone for the guitar cabinets. That's incredible.
I'll take pictures and send them to you.
Please do. That's
You
I
know,
would love to see that.
they toured with Rise Against as well. I brought them out at one point with Rise Against, and Tim used one and I used the other, and then that might be where the latches broke on them. But yeah, There's still guar blood inside some like parts of it too, so there's that. Yeah,
That's amazing.
there's still guar blood in my life. My whole life has
What
guar
is that?
blood
It's
in it.
just guar blood.
It's just guar blood, just guar blood. It's funny how it'll react. Sometimes it'll like you'll get it wet certain things, and they'll be red on your hands again. Just old gear that you haven't seen in a while. Yeah,
Yeah,
it's pretty funny.
dude.
Well, Ryan, man, thank you so much for doing this. Like I said, I keep this pretty tight. But for anyone, I mean, I don't have to tell anybody to check out Riffs, Beards, and Gear, but because it is very,
Thanks,
very
man.
successful, and you do a great job over there. But everyone should check out Riffs, Beards, and Gear. It's funny you do so many riffs on there because that is the namesake.
Yeah.
I always do a riff on here, but I'm just going to tell people to check out your page because it's all
So many
riffs, man.
riffs.
It's a lot of
Dude,
riffs.
so many riffs. I love the
Yeah,
riff.
and you love the riff, man. It's
God, I love the
well,
riff.
let's face it, that's all it is. It's like we just said on this podcast. It's all Hetfield,
Dog,
you know.
I never wanted to be Hammett. I always wanted to be Hetfield.
I mean, there's some people that are Hetfield. There's some people that are
Totally.
Hammond.
And dude, no disrespect at all, but I always wanted to just have the white Explorer with the hockey
Oh,
stick. Oh God,
absolutely. There's something so cool about that. And then from now on, if you like somebody right away, you just go, that's a Hetfield. That's a Hetfield.
that's a het, dude. That's a shirt.
That's a shirt. That's a shirt. That's a
That's a
Hetfield.
shirt,
Well, so nice to meet you, buddy, and so nice. Thank you so much for doing the
dude.
anti-heroes.
Thank you so much for having me. You
Absolutely.
have been wonderful.
Oh, well, thank you, bud. Take care, man.
You too.
Okay. That was my interview with Ryan Fluff Bruce. Again, I didn't know Ryan until last week, and I am sort of fascinated with what he does and this whole other avenue that he sort of created for himself, and the others have followed suit. Now there's so many pages on YouTube. You could just find yourself in a rabbit hole that could go on for hours or days even, and all of it's informative. And they're at various stages of competence, I guess we could say. Ryan's definitely got one of the better ones. But I don't understand much about that whole world. I do know that dude knows what he wants and how to get it, and he is a confident individual. Like he knows exactly what he's doing. I was really impressed with him when I met him, and I wanted to sort of pick his brain. So I'm glad I got a chance to, because again, I had the sort of connection with him that he's done what I do. He's been a professional touring musician, but he's also seen this other avenue for himself. He saw the sort of this whole new paradigm coming. You know, he just like any industry, things constantly pivot and change, and I guess it's interesting to me that he was able to sort of see this all happening and get in on the ground floor. I sometimes think that I'm maybe keeping my head down too much and not looking up, because what I do is so taxing and challenging and time consuming that you don't get a chance to, you're sort of in a tunnel. You don't get up to see, like, okay, how are people consuming guitar nowadays or music nowadays? And Ryan sort of broke out of that and he was able to figure it out. And that's just really, really impressive to me. So I would encourage you to check out the Riffs, Beards, and Gear YouTube channel and just do yourself a favor and look at all the riffs Ryan comes up with. Check out his band, of course, Dragged Under. So yeah, I'm going to also thank the lovely folks at Jim Dunlop and MXR Pedals. Find out what they're doing at jimdunlop.com. Also, the wonderful, fine folks over at DistroKid, because they are giving you the chance to put out your own music, folks, on all the streaming platforms. I'm going to leave it at that. Again, check out Ryan Fluff Bruce and his wonderful YouTube page, Riffs, Beards, and Gear. Check out all of his riffs that he does on there. He's a great player and does really cool, fun things. And I will talk to you soon. Thank you so much for tuning in.